This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
New report shows that terror activities in 5 African countries increased sharply in 2017. We examine the major changes in Ethiopia under the leadership of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And China and Portugal agreed to deepen cooperation on China's Belt and Road Initiative. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Uche joins me in studio with a sneak peek of what's ahead in business news.
Thank you, Peninah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Zimbabwe opens up its doors to foreign investors for majority stakes in the country's diamond mines. And the US scouts for wealthy Kenyans keen on permanent American citizenship. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it's back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. We begin the broadcast with security issues. The latest Global Terrorism Index shows that terror activities in 5 African countries in terrorism-related deaths. According to the report, the Middle East, North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa were the most impacted by terrorism in 2017. For more on this, we're joined live by Daniel Branches in Washington. Daniel, what are the major highlights of this Global Terrorism Index and how does Africa fit into that?
Yeah, this report really looks at 2017, the full numbers that they have access to, and they say that 18,814 people were killed in 2017 as a result of terrorism. There was marked improvement in 94 countries and a deterioration in about 46. So you're talking, as you said there, about a 27% decline in terrorism deaths globally. So it's not a terribly bad picture. And most of the improvements were in Iraq, and as a result of the most deadly terrorist group being somewhat undermined strategically on the battlefield in Iraq and Syria, the Islamic State movement, a 52% reduction in deaths from that individual group alone, and in Iraq 56% reduction in total terrorism deaths from almost 10,000 down to 4,200 in 2017 compared with 2016. Now, Sub-Saharan Africa is slightly down by about 5%. But when you factor in the impact of a major increase in both Somalia and Egypt, it doesn't look incredibly good for Africa in terms of the overall trend, though I would say that Nigeria has been making strides in terms of tackling Boko Haram.
So, Daniel, what are some of the key areas of concern for Africa in this report?
Well, Somalia in particular has pretty bad numbers to start with. A 93% increase in terrorism-related deaths in 2017 compared with the previous year. So in raw numbers, that comes from around about 760 to almost 1,500 deaths in Somalia as they really struggled to contain the threat of Al-Shabaab posed particularly in and around Mogadishu. And of course, we had an extreme it was the biggest terrorist attack in 2017 in Somalia, that massive truck bombing, you may remember, that really pumped up those numbers. And also in Egypt, a very worrying trend in the Sinai Peninsula, with overall in that country 123% increase in deaths in Egypt to 655 deaths overall. As I say, those incidents were concentrated in the Sinai Peninsula, with the Islamic State offshoots there in particular, very concentrated. And as well, when you compare it with 2015, where there were similar numbers of deaths in Egypt, there were far more individual incidents. Only 169 total incidents in Egypt compared with 539 in 2015. Same number of deaths. That means each time the Islamic State strikes in Egypt, it becomes even more deadly. So there are some worrying signs, but also some positives, particularly when it comes to Nigeria and tackling Boko Haram and also Fulani extremists, though the report indicates that the Fulani extremist threat is increasing this year.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much for that. Daniel Branches live in Washington. Meanwhile, security chiefs from across East Africa have been meeting in Uganda to set up a database of suspected terrorists. Officials are concerned jihadists are accessing funding from religious extremists with the intention of causing instability in the region. CGTN's Hilary Ayasiga reports from the forum.
Policing the region, security officers from Great Lakes states are reviewing their counter-terrorism tactics.
We need to look at those who finance this kind of crime. It is very, very unfair of them, but it's not enough to call them unfair. We need to fight it. We need to find out the movement of money from who to who and what that money does. We need to protect our borders a little more without curtailing the freedom of our people.
Some fighters are funded by religious extremists in Iraq and Syria. Officials believe sharing intelligence data could help to stop them.
We must also create very, very strong and reliable databases. When things happen, we should be able to analyze intelligence, analyze data, and store it properly so that we use it for the next terrorist occurrences.
Despite government efforts, Al-Shabaab is an ongoing threat to peace in the Horn of Africa. Other specific terror incidents include an attack on football fans in Uganda in 2010 and the twin bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998.
We are doing assessment mission to have an image, an overview on how to react depending of the region. That's very important.
African countries are being encouraged to work with International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol, to track suspected terrorist movements. For its part, Uganda is installing security cameras in urban centers to crack down on criminal activities. Similar solutions are being tabled at this meeting.
And by the time we finish, we shall have addressed border control mechanisms, we shall have addressed those who finance this crime, we shall have addressed porous borders, we shall have addressed training issues, building databases, crime intelligence analysis systems, establish systems that address this so that we can predict and foresee this kind of crime before it happens.
Delegates are also discussing how to monitor online platforms for terrorism-related activities. Police chiefs here believe this summit will help close any loophole within the regional security system, but it will take vigilance and coordination to prevent future acts of terror. Hilary Ayasiga, CGTN, Kampala.
And for more on this, we joined in Kampala by Freddie David Egesa, a regional security analyst. Freddie, thank you for joining us. Terror attacks remain a major threat in the region. How can cross-border sharing of intelligence help to tackle these security risks?
Of course, we are aware that terrorism has no borders. Terrorism has no aims and known aims and objectives other than destruction. So coming up with a common cause as several countries, I think is the best way to go. It kind of negates, it kind of starts or switches into a situation that to tell terrorists that the countries are not sleeping and they are watching to see what comes up next, and they will counteract if in case there is an attack. So it should not be like one, because terrorists, they can plan in one country and then attack several others. So and terrorism being planned in one country is a problem of several other countries around.
And why is it critical to have a database of suspected terrorists?
Yeah, because terrorists are mobile, they're very mobile with their aims and whatever, they're very mobile. They'll move from one country to the other, setting up bases, setting up commercial programs, and doing all sorts of things. So it is very, very important that there is that kind of sharing of information, because the enemy of one country is also the enemy of several other countries around.
How can authorities effectively cut off financial support to militant groups?
That still remains a problem, especially in Africa, because of the mindset of our intelligence officers. You may not adequately fight terrorism if your mindset, if the way the officers are being paid, if the way the officers are being monitored, if the way the officers are being counted has not been addressed. Yes, we may have all the best systems, we may adopt all the best systems in Africa and like our third world countries, but as long as we do not address the issue of the individual officers going to handle these, the database, who are going to handle cameras, who are going to follow up this, we will still have a very big problem.
And finally, Freddie, what mechanisms should be put in place to lessen the security threat posed by porous borders, which is often exploited by these terror networks?
We have always recommended the situation of what we call Ujamaa intelligence, where civilians are deeply involved in the intelligence of the area. In fact, we should also go into a situation that where, say, countries literally buy intelligence from civilians, because terrorists will never plan from bushes. They always plan around populations, they deal with human beings. So we should interest the public, we should interest the wananchi, we should interest the people to kind of give back information to the government, either freely or even in a commercial way, because it is very, very, countries need this information so to kind of deal with terrorism.
All right, Freddie, thank you very much for joining us. Freddie David Egesa, live for us there in Kampala. And now to South Sudan, where according to a recent report, over 150 girls and women have been sexually assaulted over a 10-day period. The attacks took place near the town of Bentiu, located in the country's Western Unity region. The victims were raped and assaulted as they walked on roads leading to the village. In response to that attack, the United Nations is reinforcing its human rights team to help with investigations. Young men, some in civilian clothes and others in military uniform, have been accused of carrying out the attacks. The UN is also calling on armed forces to better control their troops. The report comes as South Sudanese leaders are in the process of implementing the latest peace agreement after nearly 5-year-long internal conflict.
I think it's good that now various parties to the conflict are sitting together so that they can sit together and see how together they can find a solution to that situation. Especially in this specific context where we had seen some decrease in terms of violation and abuses and rape cases because of the signing of the revitalized peace agreement. It is really a pity to see that this is happening right now. And if you are looking at the figures are very high. And this is not acceptable, of course, and we need to do something about it.
You're watching Africa Live. Time for us to take a quick break. Here's what's coming up. China and Portugal agree to deepen cooperation on China's Belt and Road Initiative. And we examine the major changes in Ethiopia under the leadership of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
China and Portugal have signed an agreement to deepen cooperation on China's Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa. The Prime Minister wants to work with China more, and as the two countries signed several deals, President Xi said they share a deep friendship.
Prime Minister Costa and I have witnessed the signing of a series of important documents on cooperation, including the MOU on the Belt and Road Initiative. The two parties will publish a joint declaration on strengthening the China-Portugal Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. This visit can be considered fruitful and a big success. This has injected a new and strong impetus into our comprehensive strategic partnership. We both agree that our bilateral relations have never been better than at this point. Next year, we will celebrate the 40th anniversary of our diplomatic ties. We will take it as a new starting point to promote our traditional friendship, to deepen our pragmatic cooperation, and to bring our partnership to a new height.
Desta visita resultam resultados concretos.
This visit has achieved fruitful results. Firstly, I want to stress Portugal's position and function in the Belt and Road Initiative. Portugal is the bridge connecting Asia and Europe. Portugal is not only of great strategic significance on the maritime Silk Road, but we also believe that in other areas, Portugal and China can carry out more cooperation. Portugal is one of China's major partners in the European Union. We have a bright future. Secondly, our cooperation has reached a new height. For instance, Chinese investment in Portugal is in a wide range of sectors. Some Portuguese banks can carry out the RMB and foreign currency settlement business. We also work together in agricultural trade and food products like pork.
Earlier, the Chinese leader got a warm welcome from the nation's parliament and met with the lawmaking body's president, Eduardo Ferrer Rodriguez. She said he hopes the country's legislatures can learn from each other and that the two sides should strengthen exchanges in global bodies. This is the first time a Chinese head of state has visited the European country in 8 years. It's also Xi's final stop on his tour of Europe and Latin America after going to Spain, Argentina and Panama. Former U.S. President George H.W. Bush will get a national farewell at Washington National Cathedral. Bush's casket has been lying in state at the U.S. Capitol, with a stream of mourners passing through around the clock. The state funeral is steeped in tradition, and Bush's casket sits atop the same black shrouded bier on which Abraham Lincoln and almost a dozen other presidents rested after their passing. Bush is wearing socks adorned with planes flying in formation, a nod to his service in World War II, when he was shot down while flying a torpedo bomber in the Western Pacific. This brings a rare gathering of every living American president: Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and the 43rd President George W. Bush, son of the 41st President. He will deliver a eulogy to his father. This is also the first state funeral for a president since Gerald Ford's a dozen years ago. Bush will then be buried at his presidential library at Texas A&M University. He is the last president from the Second World War era. He occupied the White House from 1989 to 1993. He died at the age of 94. Protests rooted in ethnic violence have continued for a third day in parts of Ethiopia's Oromia region. People have taken to the streets in Burayu near Addis Ababa, as well as in the west of the country. The government says it's doing its best to protect citizens and avoid further destruction of property. Authorities have arrested at least 200 people so far. CGTN's Gurum Chala has more.
Since October, scores of people have been killed in ethnic clashes in the Western Oromia and Benishangul Gumuz regional administration. Thousands of locals have been displaced. People across the Oromia region are calling for more protection from the government. As a temporary intervention, the military has been sent in to restore law and order. At least 200 people have been reportedly taken into custody, with more arrests expected soon. The government says it's providing assistance to families who have fled their homes. Addressing the root cause of the ethnic violence is one of the current administration's biggest challenges. Group Dara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali came to power, he's introduced a range of reforms. Politics, the economy and the social structure of the country have all been affected by these changes. But insecurity and ethnic violence remain major challenges for the government. Here's Grumchala once more.
Ethiopia's government under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has introduced a series of reforms aimed at transforming the country's economy, political structure and boosting better ties among people of the country. So far, many say the government's achievements are remarkable, but still, works of preventing citizens' death due to internal conflicts remain to be done.
The main work for the government at the moment is to guarantee the security of the people. That is why government is taking measures on those who pose harm on the people in parts of the country.
Also, to widen the political space and make the 2020 elections free and fair, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has held talks with 81 opposition leaders. It is believed that meeting is part of the wider political sector reform in the country.
The meeting held between the Prime Minister and opposition parties is part and parcel of the work we have done over the past few months to widen the political space in Ethiopia. It also helps to change the political culture here, but mainly it's about strengthening the democratization process.
One major outcome of Abiy Ahmed's reform is the unprecedented rise of women leaders inside the government's system. Ethiopia now has a woman president, a woman Supreme Court president, and 50% of the cabinet is held by women.
The government has made a great stride towards increasing the role of women in leadership positions, with, as you know now, 50% of the cabinet is now women, as well as heading the Supreme Court. This will indeed give women prominence in matters of peace, security, justice, and economic development in our country.
Many say Ethiopia should work in sustaining the gains made out of the all-rounded reform works. The government says institutionalizing the change is what it is working on.
Making sure the reforms get to the lower administrative levels is key. The government is strongly working on institutionalizing the reforms. We expect the continuous support of the people in this regard.
Ethiopia is a strong regional actor too. Under IGAD, it has, with fellow members, worked to pacify South Sudan and Somalia. Analysts say the recent peaceful situation with Eritrea is a credit the government of Abiy Ahmed should take. But like the internal issues, sustaining the peace and security of the Eastern African region requires bringing the people on board. Grumchala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
To Egypt, where a three-day defense expo has come to a close. More than 370 companies and military entities from 41 countries participated in the first arms and technology military sales event hosted in Cairo. Here's Adel Mahri with more.
Some of the world's top arms manufacturers are here in the first arms exhibition Egypt holds. And they've all come for one main purpose: to find new buyers for their weapons and technologies.
We are exporting more than 90% of our products into many countries. And when we heard that there will be the first EDEX in Cairo, we decided to come here to explore opportunities and to be present in this market.
We're keen on deepening military cooperation with Egypt. It's a state of great political influence in the Middle East and Africa. It's a window to make our products reach neighboring countries.
Egypt is one of the world's top arms purchasers. Opening its own defense market has attracted delegations from 41 countries. Defense ministers and military chiefs of staff led the hunt for the best weapons offered by some 376 producers from across the world.
Egypt on the African continent is a very strategic player in terms of ensuring peace and stability. And of course, the opportunity to come here for IDEX for us is to be able to see what capabilities have been developed to close certain gaps that we have in the battlefield and all that. And of course, we are seeing quite a number of interesting capabilities. It's not just looking for a solution, but looking for a solution that is affordable.
From handguns, sniper rifles, to heavy machinery. Tanks, missiles, naval vessels and fighter jets, along with all other army necessities, were offered.
I think it's a very successful expo and has had a great effect. We've opened discussions in prospective deals with the Egyptian government.
We did find quite a few new contacts, given the fact that this is the first time ever show in Cairo. Yes, we did make some good contacts.
Privileged by being the host, Egypt had the biggest arms display in edX to show its international guests its latest military production.
Unlike most defense expos in the Middle East, Egypt's edX aims to enhance connectivity between African and Arab armies. It's also an opportunity for the Egyptian armed forces to promote its arms industry. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, Egypt celebrated the 116th anniversary of Cairo Museum that hosts thousands of ancient Egyptian artifacts and monuments. This event coincides with the near completion of the Grand Museum, a new, larger, high-end museum located next to the Giza pyramids, casting a shadow over the future of the original antiquities home in Cairo. Here's Sarah Kim with the details.
Tourism is a major source of revenue for Egypt, and Cairo Museum is one of the main tourist attractions in the country. It receives millions of visitors every year.
The museum was inaugurated on the 15th of November 1902. It was built by a French architect with classical design. It has 170,000 ancient artifacts displayed over 2 floors. The heavy monuments such as big statues, coffins and gates are in the ground floor.
The anniversary of Cairo Museum is celebrated annually, but this year it's different. Question marks have risen over the fate of this building when the new Grand Museum is opened in 2019 at the Giza Plateau. But the Minister of Antiquities, Khaled Anani, has put an end to any speculations.
We are sending a clear message this evening that the Cairo Museum will not die. We displayed or we redisplayed 214 objects
involving tens of millions of dollars. The high-level corruption described by the Auditor General as shocking usually involves civil servants in collusion with other officials. It's against this backdrop that the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is hosting a youth conference to discuss crime and corruption.
We want to listen to your aspirations, concerns and challenges, and we want to learn from you as the future leaders and agents of change, of positive change, what your needs are to make your voice and contributions stronger in the global fight against corruption and organized crime.
President Uhuru Kenyatta says no one will be spared in the fight against corruption. It is estimated about 300,000 jobs in Kenya are lost annually as a direct result of corruption.
The negative impact that corruption has effectively does not allow us to think about achieving the Sustainable Development Goal 16, which aims at promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development.
The theme of this 3-day workshop is good governance, integrity and anti-corruption, with a special focus on how to involve the youth in each of these areas.
We all know the consequences of corruption. It damages a country's image internationally, it discourages foreign investors, increases levels of poverty through the distortion of public expenditure, raises the cost of doing business and reduces economic efficiency.
Over the next 2 days, participants will take part in discussions on policy, looking at the global drug policy framework, organized crime and corruption. About 250 youth from across the country are attending the workshop. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Let's now cross over to Uche for the day's business news.
Thanks, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz, Zimbabwe opens its doors to foreign investors for majority stakes in the country's diamond mines. And the U.S. scouts for wealthy Kenyans keen on permanent American citizenship.
Africa is the nexus.
From the multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Well, let's start off in Zimbabwe, where the government will soon allow foreign investors to hold as much as 49% controlling a stake in diamond mines. But there is a hook. Part of the foreign investors' output must be reserved for domestic downstream industries. Now, the removal of the limitation on foreign ownership will be a positive signal to investors on President Emmerson Mnangagwa's plans to revive the country's mining sector. Now, the government is targeting diamond production of about 12 million carats by 2023, compared to a forecast of 3.5 million carats this year. And staying in the country, one of Zimbabwe's leading millers, National Foods, could become the biggest casualty of a US dollar shortage. Now, the company intends to shut down its factories in Harare and Bulawayo due to lack of foreign currency. Here's CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya reporting.
By the close of business today, the mills inside that factory may shut down and the people operating them be out of work until the foreign currency crisis afflicting this country improves. And that may take a long time. National Foods says it hasn't received enough foreign currency to pay off international wheat suppliers who've now cut off its credit. The central bank, which allocates scarce foreign currency, prioritizes fuel and energy imports, leaving other sectors unable to procure raw materials or falling behind on payments, a situation that's now caught up with National Foods. The shutdown, should it go ahead, will worsen erratic supplies of bread and other confectionery items and dent the country's reindustrialization plans. The umbrella body for grain millers had previously warned that its members face ruin unless payments for wheat imports improves. Zimbabwe grows less than half of its wheat requirements and spends about $45 million per quarter on international supplies. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
And moving on now, an American private equity firm is in the country scouting for wealthy Kenyans to invest in their way into an American citizenship through, of course, the U.S. Immigrant Investor Visa Program. Now, interested locals will have to fork out $500,000 in order to qualify for the investor visa. That amount is refundable upon receiving a permanent residency in the U.S. The program was created during the tenure of the late President George H.W. Bush to stimulate the country's economy through foreign investment deals. Now, around 100 Kenyans are reportedly looking to take advantage of the window to get a permanent residence. This comes as U.S. senators seek to slam the green card immigration door, which has been used by thousands of Kenyans who have migrated to the country. Let's move on to Gambia now. The country's tourism sector is experiencing a new reawakening. Thousands of European tourists are flocking to the smiling coast of Africa as the nation intensifies its efforts to secure new markets. Take a look.
December is peak season for tourists in the Gambia. Most resorts in Banjul, the country's capital. This offers a welcome break from the winter chill at home.
I choose Gambia because it's a short flight from England. It's one of the hottest places to come this time of year, and it's with a short flight.
We used to go to other countries where the sun is shining in December, and now this is the first time we are here. We've heard from many people who come to Gambia that they like it here, that they come here every year, so that's what we want to experience now ourselves.
By the end of its 2017-2018 season, the country hopes its combined attractions of sun and sand, coupled with the local cultural sites, will have drawn in over 200,000 tourists, its highest number ever in a season. But it hasn't always been this way. In the last 2 years, the country's tourism sector has suffered a slump. An Ebola outbreak in the neighboring countries and a political standoff as the country's former president tried to cling to power both had a jarring effect on the sector. Tour companies advised tourists to stay away. But with a new president in place, things are changing. The friendly weather and scenic beaches are certainly attractions that draw in tourists to the Gambia. But the tourists say they now have another reason to choose this destination. The political stability means they feel safe here. The sector is now coming back to life. Most of the 45 main tourist hotels in Banjul are full. The tourism sector is estimated to contribute to about 20% of the Gambia's GDP. In order to increase its earnings, the government is now looking for new markets.
We have realized the potentials of Chinese tourists to the Gambia. Because we've been to China twice in 2018 and my minister has gone there. And we know for sure and for fact that the Chinese outbound market is huge, particularly for destination Africa, where the Gambia has a good market share. What we want to do is to concentrate and intensify a good marketing and promotional approach in China.
With sustained efforts, the government hopes in time to turn Africa's smallest country on land into a powerful player in the global tourism circuit. Wilkisanyabo, CGTN, the Gambia.
Well, let's head to Egypt now. Cairo will be the first city in the world to experience Uber's first bus services. Now, the ride-hailing giant CEO, Dara Khosrow-Shahi, has made the announcement during a visit to Egypt. Here's Adel El Maroui with more.
The world's biggest ride-sharing app has chosen Egypt to launch its newest service. Uber CEO Dara Khosrow-Shahi says Cairo residents will be the first to test out bus sharing.
Uber Bus. This is a product that we built for Cairo. It will now be the most affordable way to use Uber technology to get around the city. I'm especially proud to add that Cairo is the first city globally to be rolling out Uber Bus.
The new service will include minibuses, a popular mode of transportation in Egypt in the Uber fleet. Cairo is one of the most attractive markets for the ride-hailing firm.
I want to grow the number of people regularly using Uber from 100 million to 1 billion. We launched Uber Scooter this year in Cairo, and Uber Scooter has quickly become one of our fastest growing motorbike products on a global basis.
And the launch brings job opportunities with it.
We're also investing over $100 million in a customer support center that employs 600 young Egyptians in serving the Middle East and Africa, the largest Uber customer support center in this region.
The announcement and Khosrow-Shahi's visit to Cairo are significant steps for both the company and the government here. For years, Uber has been operating in violation of Egyptian legislation, but a digital transportation law now regulates the operation of ride-hailing services.
The development in information technology has driven us to formulate that law with consultation with the private sector. The law protects users of this company and its turning underground business sector to an official one that will bring revenue to the state through paying taxes.
90,000 Egyptians make a living from Uber every month. 40% of them had been previously unemployed. Uber Bus is expected to employ more freelance drivers in Egypt's massive transportation market.
Uber may have chosen Cairo to launch its latest global services.
Of course, we'll bring you more on that top of the hour. For now, it's back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. Concerns mount over the high number of Nigerian doctors leaving the country to practice abroad.
When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Do you see fast-growing, endless deserts and parched earth? Or do you see the biggest opportunity for an agricultural revolution in a generation? Do you see crowded, unplanned cities or vast, untapped markets? Do you see a population at risk, or do you see a billion-strong opportunity to grow the next wave of multi-billion-dollar firms in Africa?
To West Africa now, where Nigeria is battling a brain drain in the healthcare sector. Around 12 doctors leave the country each week to practice in the United States, Europe or the Middle East. CGTN's Phil Ihaza tells us why.
Dr. Ogumola Olajumoke is working extra shifts because her colleague has just left the country. She says working conditions abroad are far better.
I still want to serve my country, but you see there are a lot of challenges in the health system, and that's one of the reasons why some of my colleagues are leaving the country. We hear about them when they leave. After leaving the country, they top their teams there. They do great things, they provide solutions to their problems, and that's to show us that the environment is right over there.
The World Health Organization says Africa carries more than 24% of the global disease burden, but the continent has only 3% of the world's health workers. In Nigeria, there is one doctor for every 50,000 people, a far cry from the global standard of 1 to every 600 patients. Out of some 80,000 resident doctors, only half are practicing, while the other half are forced to look for alternative employment. And yet, around 90% of the practicing doctors say they are hoping to leave.
Brain drain is real in this country, and is actually occasioned by poor remuneration, lack of infrastructure, underemployment and unemployment of doctors, and perhaps placement of low places for residency training.
Health professionals have warned that the brain drain will continue until the government addresses their needs.
The Medical Association, we are doing our best. The truth of the matter is we cannot hold anybody down. We can't. The only need to do is to entice them, something that will entice them and keep them back. If the government must retain the brains we have, I think remuneration is key. Improve package for doctors. Then we need to improve our infrastructure. It's key. Because this problem of brain drain can only be solved by the government.
It's estimated that Nigeria requires an additional 237,000 doctors. That's nearly 7 times the current number.
Although the government says it's doing everything it can to meet the needs of doctors and improve the health sector, experts believe it's not enough. They say more must be done, and soon, to stop the mass exodus of doctors. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
The Global Migration Film Festival by the International Organization for Migration is underway in several countries across the world. The festival aims to enlighten people against irregular migration and its challenges through films. One of the venues where the festival is taking place is Lagos, where the IOM gathered a small group to discuss issues around irregular migration. CGTN's Deji Badmas reports.
The Global Migration Film Festival could not be coming at a better time for Nigeria. The country is struggling to put a check on the number of its citizens making the treacherous journey to Europe through the desert and the sea. Many Nigerians have either died in the desert or at the Mediterranean Sea in their attempt to make it to Europe. Almost every other week, hundreds of Nigerian migrants are repatriated from Libya. Nearly 11,000 have been repatriated this year alone, and it's estimated that thousands more are still trapped in the North African country, while many at home are still embarking on the journey. The film festival is designed to shed light on the scale and dangers of irregular migration, as well as enlighten intending migrants to do it the right way. Two films, Grandma and Bush Fallers, but about 2 African migrants are screened before a select audience comprising returnee migrants, anti-trafficking officials and migration experts. The screening set the pace for a follow-up panel session to critique the films and discuss migration issues.
This is more like, to me, half of what actually happens, because passing through the desert, passing through the Mediterranean Sea is horrible. It is horrible, and people need to see it.
We have not told them that when they enter the desert, after a particular level, they have to pay for the urine of another person. If you have no cup, you have to stoop to put mouth and drink it straight from somebody. People think it's not happening, but that is what happens in the desert.
Authorities in Nigeria, in conjunction with the International Organization for Migration, IOM, have been carrying out a series of campaigns to discourage irregular migration. Some members of the panel here say more still needs to be done.
Social media actually is very, very important and key at this point in time, because even the average person has one tiny phone. Even the average person right now can buy data. And we can actually make sure that we put this information out and let people know that irregular migration is not the way to go. From my experience since I came back to Nigeria and trying to sensitize people to talk to them about irregular migration, I discovered some of the horrible pictures is what actually scares them. Yes, when you show them the truth, they are scared to go there.
It's just scaring someone when they feel like they have no other choice. It's not going to work, right? We have to provide those alternatives. We have to make it easier and more accessible for people to get valid travel documents or visas, or we need to make sure that there's opportunities here at home.
Driven mainly by poverty, hundreds of Africans risk their lives almost every day attempting to make it to Europe through the desert and Mediterranean Sea. Many have died in the process, and much more remain trapped in Libya under horrid conditions. Deji Badmo, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And ahead in sports news, how one South African has risen from a car accident to become a top para-athlete.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Let's begin with an inspirational story. Palesa DJ Manaleng is paralyzed from the waist down after being involved in a cycling accident 4 years ago. Despite being confined to a wheelchair, she has gone on to become one of the top para-athletes in South Africa.
In 2014, Palesa Manaleng was in a cycling accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down. But that freak accident did not kill her commitment to what she's always loved, sports.
In 2014, while doing this cycling, I cycled around West Dean. And I was cycling down a street called Manmoth in West Dean. And I was going downhill, the brakes of my bicycle failed, I hit a pavement, and I flew into the Palisade wall at the UJ Stadium, rugby stadium. Dislocated my spine, I broke trips, I punctured a lung, fractured a shoulder, sustained a head injury. I'm now a complete paraplegic, so I have no feeling, no movement from just above my belly button down. And then after that, I figured, what the hell? I love cycling, I love the feeling of freedom that cycling brings.
As determined as she was to live a normal life and continue with her sports, society was not so accommodating.
My biggest challenge was adapting to society, adapting to everything around me. I mean, because once you become differently abled, the whole world changes. The most basic thing, like going to the shop, I can't access a pavement. I can't cross the road sometimes on my own because cars don't want to stop.
But she remained unfazed. Soon after being discharged from hospital, she started training for races.
My first race was in 2015 because I got discharged 2014, December 31st, I got discharged from hospital. And then I wrote to possible sponsors to sponsor me a hand cycle. 947 and Harvard Sport Promotions that will give you a hand cycle and will help you get used to it within this year. That's all we can offer you. I was like, that is more than enough. So I cycled, and in May, in 2015, I went to my first national championships.
Manaleng often competes against able-bodied athletes and outperforms them. Her goal is now to represent her country.
Out of 28 countries. Listen, I like to compete. Why would I want to represent South Africa. I've always wanted to represent South Africa. At first I wanted to represent South Africa in hockey because I played hockey then and soccer. So it is only natural for me now that I'm doing cycling to want to represent the country in cycling. I want to be the best athlete that they ever had.
Her support base now includes 2 instructors who assist her with her training.
It's a bit challenging because Vanessa is on a wheelchair, but she gives all, when it comes to training. So I also have to, work on her mental strength where, she has to do some of the things which, people are not in a wheelchair are doing.
So I'm training with her, I'm helping her. And she got a lot of achievements she wants to achieve in her life. Like she was telling, she wants to become the best cyclist, disabled cyclist. So, and I'm going to try and see if I can help her to achieve that.
Manaleng's other obsession is to inspire those who are differently abled to live their best lives.
If there's someone else out there who's now differently abled because of an accident or illness, they shouldn't think that this is the end of their life. I'd just like to say to them, keep going, chase your dream, whatever your dream is. It might not be sports. It might be to be a lawyer or a doctor or a farmer. You can do it, you know. You just need to adapt the way you do things. But all you need is a positive mind and to keep going.
She now wants to be the first female athlete from South Africa and the continent to compete at the 2020 Paralympic Games for both hand cycling and wheelchair races. Yudison Jamela for CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Kenyan Marathon World Record holder Eliud Kipchoge was crowned IAAF Men's Athlete of the Year at the association's awards gala in Monaco on Tuesday. The 34-year-old claimed the award alongside Colombian jumper Catherine Iberguen, who won the women's prize. Kipchoge set a new marathon world record in Berlin in September, smashing the previous best by 78 seconds as he clocked 2 hours, 1 minute and 39 seconds. Iberguen won both horizontal jumps at the Central American and Caribbean Games, the IAAF Continental Cup and at the IAAF Diamond League finals, winning the latter 2 titles in 2 different cities within the space of 24 hours.
The amount of work actually is the seconds, it's the minutes, it's the hours, it's the days, it's the weeks, and it's the months, and it's the months of training and planning. Good preparation. I'm still keeping on. I don't know when to call it off, but I'm still there.